Welcome one and all to the Mudai Manga Book Club podcast. Today is January 22nd, 2025, Episode 2, Lord of the Sheep. I will be your host and purveyor of all books, Louie, joined with my co-host.
Yes, now it is my turn to do the audio editing of the show, and it won't be a 3-hour monster. Yes, all according to Keikaku.
Tom.
Oh, hi. Good to see you. Thanks for doing all that work last week. It sure was nice of you.
Oh, I'm so happy you enjoyed it.
I did, because I didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, that took so long.
It was fine. It was a good episode.
Yes, it was. So for this week's episode, we have three main topics. First, we're going to talk about what we've been doing, what we've been seeing, what we've been listening to. And then our other two topics are going to be, I'm going to go over Hunter's Guild Red Hood. And then we're going to do a review of Frontier Lord Begins with Zero Subjects, the light novel, Volume 1. So, Tom.
Oh, you want me to go first? Oh, sure.
Yeah, why don't you go first, since
you've already been talking.
I had to do all that editing.
Well, fine. I'll give you some more. No. Yeah, so I've had some more time this week, so I've had a chance to go back and do some more reading. So I've continued reading Making Magic, The Sweet Life of a Witch Who Knows an Infinite MP Loophole, books 4 through 8 of the light novels. It's good. I think the best way to sum it up is basically the meme of, Mom, I want Free Run Beyond Journey's End. We have Free Run Beyond Journey's End at home, dear. Free Run at home is basically this.
Okay. Is it a isekai or reborn, or is it something
Yeah, it's an isekai
else?
where woman gets reborn, fantasy world, gets not quite infinite MP yet, but is continually building up a massive MP pool to save the world from a lack of mana.
Okay.
But one of the first effects is if you have a lot of MP, you live a long time. And I think by the end of book 2, she basically can live forever.
Yeah. So does it take place over many years, or is it still
Yes. It's already about 100 no, not quite 100, maybe like, I think it's 70 years have passed in the first 8 books.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Multiple characters have passed away. The intro and outro of every book is usually them 400 or 500 years in the future.
Weird. Okay.
So you have a bit of that free Ren, like, oh, I live forever and everybody I know will die over time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that serious. It's not that complex in what it's talking about, but there's a little bit of that. It's more entertaining and it's more enjoyable than that joke was. But super cozy free Ren with random isekai is kind of a good short summary of it.
Sounds interesting.
It's gotten better with time, but it's not, oh boy, this is so great. Also caught up on Management of a Novice Alchemist, books 2 and 3. A little non-isekai fantasy alchemy one where the main character has superpower level alchemy skills for reasons.
Okay. Not because they're reborn, but just
not because they're reborn, but because a bit of who they were born as and a bit of who taught them and a bit of, well, things just worked out this way. But it's an entertaining little book. Covers a lot of the idea of Monster Hunter type gatherers, except they're more normal people. And super powerful, crazy alchemy being a thing, but also being very bothersome. So it's a fun little light read. Took a little bit of time to reread Frontier Lord for this episode. Coming back to the first book has actually been a lot of fun. It's a great story that doesn't rely on twists, so knowing what's going to happen doesn't ruin anything.
Yeah.
It stands up on a reread. And then, since I both brought it up, and last week we did our favorites, and you talked about Yorokozu and Free Ren. They were both ones that it really hit me, like how much you like them and what was so fascinating about them. I own Free Ren 2, and I haven't read it yet. I just read the first one. And I picked up Yorokozu during the episode, like I said. I should really sit down and read these. So, Sunday night, I saw that Don't Toy With Me, Miss Nagatoro-san was on sale for the first 17 volumes, so I bought all of that and read about 11 of them.
So you haven't read these yet?
So I haven't read any of the ones that you recommended, but I read 11 volumes of Nagatoro.
Okay.
That's real good.
Is it?
It's very dumb.
Okay.
There's a lot in that to talk about. Like, it's very fun. It's very funny. It's very silly. The artist is incredibly good at drawing people wiggling, which is a weird thing to bring up, but it comes up a lot.
Huh.
His between chapter, like, book spacer pages have some of the funniest jokes in the whole series. And the series itself is very funny. If you know anything about that series, you know about 90% of what that series is about. Of an underclassman teasing her upperclassman relentlessly.
Okay.
And their entire relationship going from there. It gets to be more of an interesting story by, like, the end of book 1, book 2. We'll probably talk about it because I have an idea for that I want to do at some point. But yeah, Free Run and Yoriko's is going to have to wait because I've got 6 more books to read. Okay.
I have the first one. I just haven't read it yet because it was on super sale. So I picked it up. It's like, yeah, why not? But I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
I'm like, I have to go back and look and find it, but there's like a couple of points in like the first 2 books where it goes from like, okay, haha, this is funny, to, oh, I see where this is going now. And now it's not just, oh, this is funny, haha, but it's like, oh, this is funny, haha, and I know where it's going, and it's going to keep being funny as it goes from just Nagatoro being a jerk to Nagatoro being a jerk because it's very clear that the 2 characters really like each other and have no idea how to do anything. And the wiggling. The wiggling is a big part.
Okay, I'll check it out.
I think by like book 3, okay, this is clearly not just her bullying him the whole series. There is other things that happen.
There's more going on. Okay.
Yeah. And it's like book 4 or 5 where it goes from like the weekly, what does she do to mess with him, to like an actual narrative.
Gotcha. Okay. So it starts off more as like a joke and then becomes a little more cohesive.
It doesn't ever stop being a joke. Don't worry. It stays a joke the whole time. But this happens, and then the next chapter, that part continues, and then this leads to the next thing. And like, it's not that it's ever truly like joke of the week comics. There's clearly like a process of they talk about this, and then the next chapter they start doing that, and then the chapter after that they finish doing that.
Okay. Interesting. I have it. I just haven't read it yet. So maybe that will be next week.
It's very funny. The character designs are not very unique, but very expressive.
Oh, nice. Cool.
How about you? What have you been up to?
Okay, so I just read, full title is, That Time the Manga Editor Started a New Life in the Countryside. I've only read volume 1 of the manga. It is not a reborn or anything like that. It's just about a manga editor who's getting down on his luck. He's never had a big hit. The magazine he was in is getting shut down, so he's being transferred, and he's just going through life. It's like, is this really what I want to do? What I want to spend the rest of my life doing? So he's having this existential crisis. And he just got married, and it's kind of like, I want to quit, but I just got married. What am I going to do? And then he sees, I forget if it's an ad or somewhere, but he hears about, you can go out to this place in the country and grow your own rice. So it just kind of does it on almost a whim. It's like, this will be fun. And there's always it'll save you some money, and you can grow rice, all the rice you need for a year. So he's like, he goes out and starts doing it, and it's like, I really like this. And then it kind of progresses from there. He starts doing it more, and it's kind of like back and forth. He goes out to take care of the rice, goes back, doesn't like his job. Eventually it becomes more of, I'm quitting my job and going out to live in the countryside to be a farmer. But it's kind of like the coppersmith ride, where it really teaches you how coppersmithing, but this really teaches you how rice growing works. And it's like all the things you have to do, all the things you have to think about. But then it also dives deeper into, okay, in Japan, there's the abandoned house issue that they're having. How does that process work? So then it goes into them buying an old abandoned house, and they're going to fix it up and things like that. And it's just kind of how people go from living in the city to living in the country, and the things that they have to think about. So it's just like a happy-go-lucky story. I think there's 4 books. So it's not long. I've only read the first one. But it's interesting. It's just a slice of life kind of story.
The abandoned house sales in Japan. So you're telling me there's a book I can read to find out more about this thing that I've been hoping to do for years.
There is information about it.
Yes.
It's not like super detailed, but it kind of talks about
it's a comic book.
Things to think about. And then I've read Witch Hat Atelier. I've read all of the books now, I got the first one, it's like, oh, this is really good. And then I got the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and just kept reading them all.
Yep.
And I believe the newest one just came out, so I am going to get that at some point and read that. It is really good. If you don't know, it's about witches in another world. The way the magic works is a long time ago, magic was running rampant and everyone just did magic wherever and the world was in chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So they've kind of changed it. Not how you do magic, but how open it is about doing magic. So it's not quite outlaw, but it's not quite... you could just do it whenever you want. And the way you do magic is really unique in this story is because you do it by drawing.
Ooh.
So you draw the runes in a circle.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you connect the circle, like the outside circle, it activates the spell. So everything is about not showing people you're doing magic. So they're kind of hiding how they draw them. And then the magic just happens. They draw a really intricate design and they close the circle and something crazy comes out. Like you can form like a pillar of water or a dragon made out of water.
Ooh.
But it's all about like pens and drawing, which is really interesting coming from someone who is all about drawing. And it's like magic is done by drawing. And it's about how to do drawing to get better at doing spells.
Okay.
Some stuff happens where there's people who want to go back to the old times where magic was just free and you could just do whatever you want, whereas nowadays magic is very restricted and not everyone knows how to do magic, and the people who do have all these rules they have to follow. It's really cool. Definitely check it out. The art is really clean and nice, and yeah, it just really sells the story.
Yeah, I've seen a little bit of it. I ended up picking up a bundle of it a while ago, and it's like, oh, this is so pretty.
Yeah.
Because I think it starts off with her, a couple different scenes, but then there's just a scene of her like looking across like a pool of water with like some deer and a forest beyond. It's like, wow, this is gorgeous.
Yeah. There are scenes there that are just breathtaking with how detailed and intricate they are. And then the action is all flowing magic. And just the world itself is interesting just because of how magic is outlawed, but not outlawed. But if you abuse it, the penalty is you lose your memories of magic.
Oh.
So if it's just like a regular person and they stumble across some magic things that they weren't supposed to, okay, well, your memory's only kind of wiped out. But if your life has been magic and you did something really bad, so we're going to erase what you think of magic, your life is... you know nothing now. You're just you're back to being a child.
Okay.
But then it also goes into, okay, the younger generations, like, these rules are stupid. I can't do magic to help people because the rules say I can't do magic this way. And it's all about thinking outside the box to not break the rule, but not quite follow the rule to get things done. And
okay. Yeah.
It's really good. So they are up to book 13 now in English.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
And then, I don't know if you watched it, but Squid Game Season 2 just came out, so just watch that.
Heard a lot about it, never watched it.
Okay, so I won't spoil it. It's really good. The only disappointing thing about Season 2 is that it ends in a cliffhanger. If you just watch Season 1, it's almost its own story, self-contained story.
Right.
Or Season 2 is not.
Okay.
So I think Season 3 is supposed to come out later this year. It's really good. I definitely recommend checking Squid Games out. It's set in South Korea.
Yes.
It can be violent, but it's interesting. If you think about it, it's not a completely new idea, but it's done really well.
Okay.
And then it was GDQ, so if it wasn't anyone who doesn't know, it's Games Done Quick. It's a charity marathon for speedrunning. So they do a whole week of just speedrunning video games. All different video games from modern to classic. This time of year is for cancer research. So they just raised, I think, $2.5 million.
Oh, good. I didn't hear how the total had come out, but
Yep. I think they beat last year's record.
It might have beaten it. It's very close.
Yeah.
But it's still $2.5 million.
Yeah. It's not the highest they've ever gotten, but it's definitely high.
I think they're fine.
And then you can watch all the races on YouTube. So definitely check them out. That's Games Done Quick. And then I think it's Awesome Games Done Quick is the one set in January. And then in the summer, they do a Summer Games Done Quick. Similar idea, but a different charity.
Yep. The Summer Games Done Quick is for Medicine Sans Frontiers. Yeah, and then the winter is Awesome Games Done Quick for cancer research. I watch a ton of GDQ. I just Never watch it when it comes out, but they have a couple other smaller marathons. Some of them are focused on other issues or are just to highlight different things. Like there's the Femme Fatales for a couple of days where it's all women speedrunners. And there's a couple others like that. They also have the GDQ Hotfix, which is their regular programming throughout the year. There's a bunch of different shows where they'll just do something speedrunning adjacent. If you enjoy people playing games at a very technical, high level, speedrunning, randomizers, things like that, you probably already know about GDQ, and there's no reason for us to encourage you to watch that. But if you don't, you should go check them out. They do a ton of good stuff.
So our first topic for discussion tonight is a review by me on the Hunters Guild Red Hood. Story and art by Yuki Kawaguchi. And I don't believe you've read this.
You have told me about this series before, and I've seen it and been like, okay, that does sound interesting, but I have not actually read any of it. And all that you've really told me before is probably what you're about to tell me, which is it existed, you really like it, it got canceled.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So this is a Shonen Jump, I believe done in 2021, published June to November. So there's 18 chapters over 3 volumes, and in 3 volumes there's an epilogue at the end that kind of explains what happened after the final chapter that was published in the weekly. There's a one-shot that was done previous. The original Red Hood one-shot was done, so that's in there. There's also a extra story, a one-shot that's not related to Red Hood that the author did, that just also included because he was, I don't know if he's a he, but the author was the assistant for My Hero Academia for a while, and then they've also done a number of one-shots for a number of years. So they included some of the other one-shots they've done. So, Hunters Guild Red Hood. Quick summary. It's not very long. It did get canceled. And it's one of those, it starts off really good, has a lot of potential. And then it starts to kind of, I'm not quite sure when they found out they were going to get canceled. And you can definitely tell, okay, we're going to wrap this up right now. So it takes a hard left and say, okay, we're heading towards the end immediately.
Yeah.
So there's 3 main characters. There's a number of other minor characters, but the 3 main ones are, and if you're looking at the books, there's Grim. It's the girl on the cover, the main girl. She's a hunter because this is all about hunters who hunt monsters. She is cursed. She is called Grim of the 100 Cannons. So in the story, she is a cursed hunter who hunts werewolves because that's the main bad guy at the beginning. And she has all these different guns that she uses. They're kind of overpowered guns, but they're also weird, goofy guns. And they kind of do different things depending on the situation. There's Velo, who is the main boy you see on all the covers. He is an orphan. His parents were killed by werewolves. He lives in this little village, and he wants to become a hunter. Not for revenge, but sort of. He's a little confusing, and his character story is completely changed by the end. And I'll get to that eventually. And then the other main character is the mayor. He's a kind man. He kind of saves the town. Because this is a tiny little village, so they have to kind of take care of themselves. So the mayor kind of watches over everyone. He's this big kind of Santa Claus-looking person.
Oh, boy.
Who kind of, I'm always going to help everyone. I'll sell all my possessions to make sure the town's okay and things like that. And his character does a complete 180 at the end of this book.
Yeah, okay.
So the main story is werewolves are bad. They can shapeshift into people. They love eating humans, so that's their biggest thing. They are incredibly hungry always, and this has driven them completely insane. So they are the epitome of this thing is going to try to eat as many people as it can because they are always hungry.
Okay.
It starts off with there's a werewolf somewhere in the village. The mayor hired the Hunters Guild to send someone out to take out the werewolf because it's going to eat everyone. It's a tiny little village. They can't defend themselves. So as this is going on, Grim shows up. She shows up as a tiny little girl. It's like, okay, what the heck? We paid a ton of money for the Hunters Guild, and they sent us this little tiny girl. So it turns out that she is cursed. And the curse is you live as a child, but then can turn that off for a couple hours a day, and you become your full-grown, powerful self, but can only do it once per day. Which you don't learn quite at the beginning, but it comes up later.
Okay.
So she shows up, this little girl's like trying to figure out what's going on. Like, is there an actual werewolf, or are these people just kind of living out in the woods and not knowing what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
So they figure out, oh, well, there is a werewolf. And the one thing about this, it gets very violent, and the art really shows off the horror of a werewolf. They're almost not quite werewolves, they're almost alien monsters, because they can split their whole faces open and kind of swallow people whole or rip them to pieces. It gets very violent very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, the story is really interesting, but because they're shape-shifting, it's kind of like, who is the one who's the werewolf? And they're trying to figure it out, and they, for the beginning opening, they use some tools to kind of draw out the werewolf, because they're also not idiots, but they are driven insane by hunger, so they slip up.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So they defeat the werewolf, they do that crazy action pose where they're walking away from an explosion because they blow it up. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where the first chapter ends.
Okay.
So then the next arc is that turns out there was more than one werewolf. There's two more. Mm-hmm. And then these two are a bit smarter, so they're kind of blending in with the village. And it's about figuring out who's the actual werewolves and who are the villagers. And during all of the first chapter, the mayor disappears. They assume that the werewolf ate him because they find him with his axe. So the mayor's gone.
Okay.
So then Vilo and Grimm are trying to figure out who are these last two werewolves, because they know there's more werewolves. So they're trying to figure out who in the village could be the werewolf. They eventually figure that out. They destroy them. And this, you learn about the brutality of the werewolves, because one of them eats the other's heart to get stronger. So it's like it rips the heart out of the other one as it's dying and eats it. So it's violent, it's bloody. And then they destroy the werewolf. And then right as this happens, giant magic stuff goes off. And this huge beast appears in the sky, along with a witch. This is the alpha werewolf. And he just wipes the floor with Grimm. It's like, okay, you are powerful, but you're nothing compared to me. Mm-hmm. He sees Vilo, is like, okay, I like your tenacity, but you're not good enough. You're not even close to my level yet. So come back later. And he's like, oh, because you killed my, I guess, offspring, almost.
Okay.
I'm going to have the witch who's with me destroy your village. So they destroy the village completely. And then they're like, okay, see you later here, losers. We're done. You're not worth our time. We're going to keep going.
Okay.
So then, okay, it's like, oh, Vilo has no village to really watch after. All the villagers are leaving to go to other villages. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, now what do we do? So that's kind of the first real arc. Mm-hmm. The one thing to note is that in the world, the hunters hunt things. They hunt monsters. That's their role.
Yeah.
And it starts off, it's like, she asks Vilo, hey, did you know dragons were real? It's like, no, those dragons were fairy tales. They died off. There's no such thing as dragons. It's like, no, the hunters killed them all 500 years ago.
Oh.
That's why there's no more dragons. So the hunters wipe out monster species. That's their role.
Okay.
To keep people going.
All right.
So that's kind of the first arc. I think that's about the first volume, almost. Mm-hmm. Vilo says, okay, let's go be hunters. Grimm says, all right, fine, follow me. They go off. They meet some more hunters along the way. And then this is kind of where the story is. I'm not sure if they should have gone this way or not, but they do a training / test taking arc where you meet a bunch of more characters who all are trying to take the hunter exam for different reasons. Mm-hmm. And then in this, you meet a bunch of other actual hunters, and they all have superpowers, kind of.
Okay.
The one they meet next is, I believe her name is Debonair. She can overheat her body. So she pretty much overheats her body to some crazy temperature and uses that to melt things with her hand or shoot fire, things like that. So they're all the real good hunters are cursed in some way or have powers or magic. So then they go through this training section and then test-taking section where they play cops and robbers with all of the hunters. And it's an interesting little escape from kind of like the violence of the werewolves.
Okay.
But the werewolves are kind of forgotten at this point.
Yeah.
Like, the new characters are interesting, but it kind of pulls away. There's so many introduced at once that it's kind of like, okay, each one is neat individually, but you just introduce like 10 new characters, and they all seem to be important.
Yeah.
As this is going on, because they're in this giant machine driving over the ocean to get to the Hunters Guild, because they have to pass the test before they reach the guild, and if they don't, they're kicked off the transport, and they have to go back and take the test, I believe, the following year. So a couple of them have taken it before, some were new. So Vilo is new, but he's been kind of hunting in his village for a long time, and that's going on. So then, as this is going towards the Hunters Guild, you see the Alpha and the Witch from before.
Okay.
So they're like, they're watching them. It's like, okay, there goes the new hunters, and what are we going to do about it? It's like, what do you think? And then it shows a picture of the mayor sitting on a little stone. It's like, okay, we got to do something. It's like, oh, he's alive. And he's not a good person, apparently. Because the Alpha and the Witch are on something called a red list. They mention it, but it kind of, just because this is so short, they don't really get into it. So it's like, these are the number one most wanted monsters that need to be destroyed. And the Witch and the Wolf are on it. And then right as this is going on, the Witch is talking to the Alpha. And she looks over, it's like, wait, who was I talking to? And the Wolf is gone. What the heck just happened?
Okay.
And then you find she has this letter in her hands, and she's reading, it's like, if I ever disappear without warning, this will be protected. So, super spoilers from now on. This completely is like what happens.
Spoiler warning here. Got it.
Yeah, spoiler warning here. This kind of completely upends what's going to happen. So what the actual thing is that there is a book where the Hunters Guild writes out what is going to happen in the world. So they are chronicling the story for the gods. And the gods enjoy interesting stories. So there's this person, you can't see his face, he's hooded, sitting, writing the story that you're reading.
Okay.
And turns out a number of years ago, someone stole some blank pages from the book and has been messing with the world.
Okay.
So the person in the hood who's writing the story of the world is called the Red Hood. So he is there writing for the gods who like interesting stories, and how sometimes they like certain things, sometimes there's pages about notes about the stories. It goes deep into, okay, what stories do people like, and things like that. And as this is going on, you find out that the mayor was also a Red Hood who said, no, this is not a way to run this world. But instead of trying to fix it, he's trying to destroy it. So that's why he stole 2 pages and ran away.
Okay.
So he's going to use these 2 pages to mess with the world. And he does that with Vilo, because he wrote Vilo's story on these pages that he stole. Because of that, he wrote Vilo in such a way that it messes with fate. Because the book pretty much sets fate. Okay. So if a monster is going to destroy a village, it's written in the book. If monsters are going to be destroyed, it's written in the book.
Right.
So he uses these pages to make Vilo become the opposite of fate. So it pulls everyone out of the book if you're near him.
Okay.
And eventually it's like, okay, this is really weird and really meta. It's kind of like, okay, here, we'll write an interesting story in the book. And it's like, okay, this is kind of out of nowhere almost. And because of that, they were able to trap the mayor in kind of its own little story where he just kind of is defeated. And they destroy the book because, like, okay, this can't be how we live from now on. And then, so that's kind of where the chapter 18 ends, roughly.
Okay.
And then in the epilogue, it's a year later. They're still the hunters. And you see, like, some of the hunters you've met before on the training who were introduced. Mm-hmm. They're out fighting other monsters. One of them's fighting, like, an air giant. Other people are fighting werewolves. Mm-hmm. And they're learning that werewolves are not monsters so much. They're just people who are sick. So they're trying to capture werewolves to kind of bring them back to becoming humans. And you see that, like, Grimm and Vilo are hunting mermaids. Because they do, it's a lot of, not quite steampunk, like, industrial machines.
Proto-industrial, early industry. Okay.
So, like, there's a tank, but it's very old school tank. There's a submarine, and just everything is covered in guns. Because they're fighting giant monsters. Yeah. So it's like, you just need tons of guns. And it kind of ends with, like, there's more hunting to do, and that's kind of where it stops.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the story in a nutshell. And then the extra story is if hermit crabs were the size of buildings, And they just took over buildings for shells instead of actual shells. So the hermit crabs just keep getting bigger and bigger. And then it's about a group of people who go around destroying hermit crabs. It's very weird. It's it's in the same idea where they're just going around destroying hermit crabs to get them out of buildings because they just, oh, this is a neat building. This is my home now. And then they just take it over. So you see just houses walking around.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's Red Hood.
That, sure.
3 volumes, done by Shonen Jump. It could have been so good.
Yeah.
There's the bones of a really cool story. Because it was 2021, I think it may have been something to do with COVID or things like that. But it just didn't have the audience that it needed to really survive. Because I could have seen this kind of story doing really well as an older kind of age group.
So not a Shonen Jump, but...
Yeah, like a little older than Shonen.
Okay.
In the first chapter, in the first volume, there's some really violent, bloody parts. Which, if you've read a lot of Shonen, most of them aren't violent and bloody. Like, there's some blood, but this is like geysers of blood sometimes, where people are, like, monsters are ripped in half and...
Pretty serious amount of blood. Okay. It looks like it ran for 4 months.
Yeah. Yep. 18 volumes, or 18 books.
18 chapters.
Chapters. That's the word. So, yeah, roughly 4 months.
Okay.
I think as soon as it got to the training and the test, that's where either the writing was on the wall and we got to start wrapping up soon, or was close to that. Because I think if it kept the idea of going and hunting werewolves, like, because they did hunting werewolves in his village, and then there was more. I think if they had done hunting werewolves in other villages or other places, that would have at least made the story more interesting. But as soon as they went to a training / test-taking arc, I kind of like, okay, I don't know if it has enough leverage or interest to really do a long training arc where it's a lot of character driven. It's not always exciting per se. I don't know if it needed to do that a little later.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions I want to ask you. And the first was, like, where do you think the story went wrong? Because as you said, like, there's the idea of the story is like, okay, weird, unexpected, but okay, yeah, I can enjoy this. Sure, let's go with it. Like, where do you feel like it went wrong? It got canceled, obviously. That could have been for all sorts of reasons. But, like, do you feel like, oh, this story went wrong here, and this is where it started to go down, like, as you said, the training arc and not focusing on the werewolves? Like, what was the thing that pushed it from, like, okay, this is fun, to, okay, I'm not so sure about this?
So the training arc definitely felt like that was something that you have to really be invested in this story to enjoy this, because there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of people now. All the werewolves, there's no werewolves anymore once they get onto the training. All the werewolves are gone. The idea of werewolves is in the background, but it's not a thing anymore. So as soon as you get onto this training trip, you have all this character interaction, but the payoff is okay. There's action, but not quite the same. But as soon as you get to the part where the alpha disappears and you learn about the book, it just goes cuckoo bananas. This is like, okay, we're just throwing stuff, and this is not going to last long, because we just went completely in the wrong direction of where we were going. And it's like, this is just, I am writing a meta story about writing stories.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of Grimm fairy tale references and things like that, because Grimm is obviously a tale of Grimm fairy tales, and she wears a red hood, like a little Red Riding Hood. She hunts werewolves.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that. And as soon as it got to, oh, we're doing this training, we're going to go become hunters and go out into the world, and it's like, nope, we're doing this instead. Everyone, it's a big panic. The mayor is evil. He's an evil sorcerer witch. And then we're going to have this sit down with the original Red Hood who writes stories. It's like, okay, this is on its last legs, it feels like. And it was.
Yeah. Okay. And then the second thing I sort of wanted to ask you about, because the way you described it as you went through the story, it's like obviously crazy and weird and doesn't make sense, but it, at least the way you described it, it almost feels like there is a thread there where this could make sense. do you think instead of like the problems it had, it ended up being successful and it went on?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this was the plan for the story? What do you feel? Does it feel like, okay, this is probably where they were going to go eventually, but maybe like book 15 instead of book 2.5?
I think they would have gotten to the idea of the Red Hood eventually because the mayor just disappeared and there's no trace. You assume he died, but you don't actually know that. You just assume the werewolf ate him.
Yeah.
So this could have been the plan, that we were going to do this. Someone's writing the story and then completely changing how Velo worked. It's kind of like, this is what we were going to work with eventually, or was this, well, we needed to come up with something and this kind of fits what we did before, so we'll just do that. It's kind of hard to tell. But I think the starting off premise of hunting monsters with crazy contraptions and guns and curses and things like that would have been a really interesting story of fighting monsters and hunting them, and it tried to do too much at once, I think. If it had stuck with fighting monsters a little bit more to kind of show what it's going to become. Because Grimm and Velo, besides the monsters that they get in his village, don't go and hunt any more monsters.
Yeah. And that's sort of the feeling I got from you explaining it as well, of just like the training / tournament / joining the guild arc. This should have been like arc 4. Yeah. Like in a few more books, like build up to it, start introducing a couple of these characters, and then you can do that. It reminds me of Bleach.
Yes.
Where it starts off with, oh, okay, by the way, there's these weird ghost things that exist that just kill people. Oh, hey, you've got the power to stop them. Oh, hey, a couple other random people around you happen to have these other powers that can also be used to fight against them. And for like 2 or 3 books, they're starting to do this. And then, oh, hey, there's this thing called the Soul Society that exists. And it's like, okay, you start hearing about this. And then, okay, now we're going to it and we're going to fight like 15 other people from there instead of fighting the monsters anymore. And like that ends up becoming this huge part of the story. And like you forget that it's about the monsters until book 14. Yeah. But it worked because there was that time building up to it, and everything got introduced slowly and semi-naturally.
Right. Yep.
But I think that's the story where it's the biggest, like, we're kind of changing the whole, like, we're still doing battles and sword fighting and magic, but it changes a lot from crazy monsters to other swordsmen with magic.
But they still did the monsters in Bleach for quite a while before they went to Soul Society.
Yeah, it was like 4 books.
At least.
No, I think it was about book 4 that it started to switch over. But it also wasn't, oh, we're going to Soul Society. Next chapter, okay, we're breaking into the city. There was, okay, why is this happening? Okay, this person disappeared. Where did they go? Oh, okay, they went here. Why did they go there? Oh, because of this thing. Why did that happen? And like it stepped its way up to it. Yep. And then it was like, oh, by the way, here's 20 new characters, 17 of which you're going to have to fight. Good luck.
Yeah. But this was when it had an established following and things like that. It also reminds me of Hunter x Hunter. Yeah. Not because of the Hunter's Guild part, but the idea that, okay, it starts off with a boy who's trying to become, I guess, a hunter. It starts off where, okay, he has a mission that he wants to do. And then they slowly add more important, like there's more characters that get added in Hunter x Hunter as it goes. Yeah. But the important ones that you actually need to remember show up a few at a time. And while there's other characters introduced, none of them matter. This felt like they added a lot of characters who mattered really quickly. It's kind of like, I can't remember everyone's name yet.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that Hunter x Hunter did that was different is right from the beginning, the point was there was the mission, there was like what Gon's trying to do, trying to find his father, trying to do these other things, but also, hey, we're going to the hunter exam.
Right. That was the point.
Yeah. And each part of it had stuff happen. Each part introduced 2 or 3 new characters. But it was also like, yeah, there's like 100 people here. We're going to just look at our part with our main character. And it's like, oh, this is a person who's here, and this is a person who's here. And here's 5 characters who are just going to die, and we don't care.
Right.
Okay, well, now you've made it through that part. Here's the next section of that hunter exam. Yeah. And because the group's gotten smaller, we're going to put you with this other group to get back to, like, a reasonable number of people. And, hey, here's another character who's going to become a major character. This arc was planned, and it was like, okay, we're going to start establishing these things. But the main crux of the story, even though Hunter is about going out and doing these tasks and hunting things and doing that sort of work just like this, right from the beginning of that story was also, we're looking at this kid who wants to become one, and the hunter exam is this major thing, and that's what he wants to do.
Right.
Here's why, but him passing the exam. Whereas it sounds like in this one, it's, hey, werewolves are trying to eat all of us.
Yeah. And, like, he does want to become a hunter, but he doesn't really know what being a hunter means.
Mm-hmm.
So he just wants to hunt things. So I think if they had done where Grimm took him as an apprentice almost, and they went on hunts, like they showed the side of, okay, here's another village, they can't pay, what do we do? Do we still help them? Or they can't pay enough?
Yeah.
Like, how does that work? Or, okay, we're also hunting mermaids and other things. We don't just hunt werewolves, because other villages need other things. So that should have been where it went next, instead of introducing all these characters. But it's still a cool story.
Another example, because we keep coming up with all the other major shonen series that did this right. What it makes me think of is, of all things, it makes me think of Naruto.
Yes.
Because it also did the same thing first of like, oh, he passes this thing, he can become a basic ninja. Okay. But he's in training, he goes through this training. Then they finish the first level of training, and then they go do a job.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, here's how the ninja world works. Hey, we're going on this job. Oh, all this crazy stuff happens on it. All these things go wrong. But it was, we're going on a job, we're going to this place, they've asked us to come do something, we're going to go do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it does tournament arc right after.
Right.
There was this in-between where you got to see them doing the thing that they were ostensibly always going to be doing from the beginning. There was training, there was learning, there was new things that the characters figured out during that mission that maybe they wouldn't have had to do if things hadn't gone pear-shaped. But, like, that was built into it. As you said, as I'm guessing is what you said, and you've agreed that this is what you said, it feels like they didn't give enough time to those things and tried to jump further ahead into the story than they should have.
Yeah, because... And the other thing is, because so much happened so quickly with the werewolves that show up, the destruction of the village, and then jumping right into the testing and training, there's very little character development between Velo and Grimm. Grimm is a very no-nonsense kind of person, and Velo is just a young boy almost who's trying to understand what's going on, and the interaction with the two of them is almost non-existent as soon as they get to the training. It's like he goes off and does other things, and Grimm is kind of doing her own thing because she's a hunter. She doesn't have to do all this stuff.
Right.
So the interaction with the main characters is almost put to the side as well. So there's a lot less character development as well. It focuses on Velo, and then Grimm is kind of pushed to the side almost. Whereas she was one of the more interesting characters that showed up at the beginning, but not the main character. But now, okay, you got rid of the interesting one that people were excited about.
Yes.
And you're following this boy. It's like, okay. And now all these other characters show up.
It would be like if they made Naruto and made the interesting character, not the main... Oh, wait, they did do that.
Yes, I know how you feel about Naruto.
No, that's not actually how I feel. It just feels like the one I could make that joke about.
Yeah.
Because so many people love Sasuke, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, it's like if they did that, and then Sasuke just kind of was forgotten as time went on.
Yeah, that's more accurately what it is, yes.
Yeah, but it's a cool story, and the art style is really nice. It's not done, like, overdone. It's very... It has a really unique style. It's really detailed. The characters are really interesting looking, and the werewolves are crazy looking.
Okay.
It's very much a almost horror when the werewolves show up, just because they're so out there, they're so violent. You can almost hear the way they're talking, just how they do the dialogue bubbles are different from a regular person.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really cool, but it's just it's so close, because there's scenes where they're just riding in carts and you see this huge just golem monster walking in the background of these crazy landscape scenes. Like, what is that? And we have no idea. It's not talked about. It's like, there's so much there that could have been awesome.
Okay.
It's frustrating, but it's cool.
Final thoughts.
Okay.
And I feel like you've already answered this, but I want to make it explicit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've talked about all this. We've said all of this. All of these things we've gone through.
Yep.
Would you tell someone, hey, you should pick this up and you should read it? Or maybe skip it unless you're really interested?
I would say that if you're looking for something different, check it out. Read the first few, if you can read some of it ahead of time, check it out.
Okay.
Just know that there's no real ending. It just kind of says there's more to come, because we're going to keep hunting, and that's where it ends. The premise is really cool. The art is really nice. The story is so frustrating at some points because of how it went. And there's so much that could have been done to make this story awesome. But it just stopped too early. It got canceled. And it's so frustrating.
Okay.
But definitely check it out if you want to. It's a cool idea. As we were talking about in one of the other episodes, public libraries, if you can find one, read it. It's 3 volumes. So if you can get them somewhere. It won't take long to read, but it's a neat idea. And it just ended too early.
And with that, everybody, we're going to get into our big topic for today. We're going to be doing a full review of The Frontier Lord Begins with 0 Subjects, book 1 of the light novel series. I read the light novels for this. I know I encourage you to read this, but I believe you've only read the manga. That's correct?
Yep.
Yeah.
I have only read the first, I believe, 6 volumes of the manga. It's not... I think there's another one coming out soon.
Yeah, they're still coming out. They're still being written, and I think the light novels is also at around 6 or 7, and I think you're getting into like book 4, if I remember last time I looked.
Yes, I believe so. I think it's 2 maybe books or manga per volume, somewhere around there.
Yeah, thereabouts.
Yeah, around there.
What day does this episode... I'm sorry, not what day does this episode release? Of course, that's not what I mean at all. What day is it today?
Today is the 22nd.
The 22nd. Oh, yes. That's why we did this, because today the next volume of the manga releases. How could we possibly have forgotten that? You clearly knew that, because you're looking at that right now. Yeah, that's definitely what we're at right now. Yep, yes. This is live. And the novels, I believe we have 6 books right now, and the 7th is coming out, I think, in a couple more weeks.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to find it.
And it's still coming out in Japan?
Date. Yes, it's an ongoing series. It is not over.
Okay.
The next novel is coming out near the end of February.
Okay.
And that'll be book 7. So that's what we're going to cover right now. We're going to do spoilers for the first novel, but we're not going to go any further than that. But to give you a moderately short summary of what happens in the book, it begins with our hero, or well, more our protagonist. Well, no, he is a war hero.
Yes, he is.
Diaz. He does not have a family name in the first book. He is a hero of the last great war of the kingdom. He's also kind of an idiot. Both other people call him that, and he calls himself that. but he was a war hero of a 20-year-long war, and in appreciation of his service, the king gives him a noble title and declares him the domain lord of the Nezrone grasslands, and then sends him to go and lead it. However, when he's brought there to lead it, he's put in a carriage by a bunch of people who don't seem to like him. They drive out to the middle of the grasslands, push him out the door with his axe, his armor, the clothes he's wearing, and then close the door behind him and drive away. And he's just standing there like, okay, let's look around. I see some grass. Look over there. Some more grass. Look the other way. Some more grass. Okay, it's a grassland.
Nothing but grass.
Nothing but grass. And one of the things that he mentions early on, it's not a huge plot point, but it's not even like useful grass. It's this really soft, plain grass that you can't make anything with it. You can't do anything with it. And there is nothing but grass. There are no trees. I think where he starts, you can't even see mountains in the distance. It is not a completely endless plain of grass. You walk in a direction, you'll get to another kingdom, you'll get to a forest, you'll get to a mountain. He's dropped in the center and there is nothing. So he ends up wandering around for most of the day. He finds a small little stream. He's not really sure what he's going to do. He's the ruler of this land and there's nobody here. There's just grass. So he does what everybody does and he takes a nap. The next morning, he's woken up by a woman shouting at him, who we will discover to be Alna, who is, we will quickly discover, an Onikin, which is a native dweller of the grasslands. They're a mix of a few different nomadic tribes, a bit of Mongolian, a bit of others thrown in. Mm-hmm. But the three main points are not someone Diaz has ever seen before, has a giant horn coming out of her forehead that is generally blue, but can change color and glow, because magic does exist. And at the moment is currently yelling at him and asking what the hell he's doing there.
Pretty much, yeah.
Diaz, not knowing what's going on and being like, this is my domain. This is a person in my domain. Therefore, I'm in charge of them. And this is important because this is what Diaz is, and this is sort of part of the conceit of the story. I must protect them and take care of them and do right by them. He's not like, I'm in charge. No, he's like, oh, yeah, I'm in charge. I need to make your life better. How can I make your life better? So she asks, what are you doing here? He answers completely honestly, the king told me to come be the domain lord. That's why I'm here. You mean the king who's tried to kill us? Oh, really? No, he didn't say anything about you. Well, are you an enemy of us or an ally? I don't really know. Well, answer. Well, you live here. I'm the leader here. I'm your ally. I am here for you. And as we'll quickly find out, one of the magic of the Onikin, they can do what's called a soul appraisal, where they can tell if someone is intending to help them or intending to harm them. And, as will come up later, Diaz is what is considered a bright blue. Blue being someone who's not only not trying to hurt you, that would be white, is obviously not someone intentionally trying to hurt them, that would be red, but someone who is actively trying to help you, blue. Every question that Alna asks and everything she tries to get him to say always comes back bright blue. And this drives her crazy. Absolutely hates it. Cannot stand this. But it's blue. So she tells him to get up and she leads them back to her village. And there's a whole bunch of Onikin people there. It's a huge series of yurts, kind of like wooden framed tents covered in animal skins and wool. We come from the US, so not exactly like teepees, Native American style, but because these are more woven fabric than animal skins, although there is some of that. But that idea, this quickly disassemblable, movable tent village. All Onikin. No humans. Diaz is brought before the elder, who I love the description of, appears to be a pile of cloaks in the middle of the room. And then eventually, as this pile of cloaks starts talking to them, Diaz realizes there's a really old woman sitting in the middle of it, whose face eventually pops out. And it's like, oh, I thought you were just a pile of clothing. He does not say that, but it's a great visual.
Yes. It's really well done in the manga. It's just a head, and it's just clothes on top of it.
Yeah. So she explains more of what's going on. The Onikin used to be at war with the kingdom. The war ended. This was a different war that Diaz was not involved in. I believe it was a number of years ago. Like, this would have been before the last war. And immediately after the war ended, they, quote-unquote, left, and then immediately activated one of their other major magics, which is concealment, snuck back into the grasslands and have been hiding there ever since. She talks to Diaz and realizes that, hey, and also calls him a fool to his face, calls him an idiot to his face, and he's like, I mean, you're not wrong, but also notes that she likes him as he does not have the prejudices of others, and he is willing to at least hear them out and not see them as enemies, but they are not his subjects. So Diaz is back to square one. It's just him. Ha ha ha, title drop, Frontier Lord, 0 subjects. Anyway.
So
however,
I do want to point out one thing.
Yes.
While he is not the brightest bulb in the shed.
Oh, we'll come back to that a lot. Yes. He's an idiot, but there's a very specific way in which that is. He's not incompetent.
No. He is as straightforward, honest to a fault as you could be.
100%. And that's where I think calling him a fool is a much better way to say it. But in the book, they call him an idiot more often.
Yeah. In the manga, it's more like, you're a very simple person.
Yeah, and even that's like not exactly it. There's in certain ways, but he has that foolish, very trusting.
Yes, he's extremely trusting.
Extremely trusting.
Yeah.
After all, he's like, oh, I have no idea who you are. Please don't reach for your bow and try to shoot me, because I think I'm your leader and my job is to protect you.
Yes.
Oh, you're not. Oh, no, I'm sad.
And DS is not a young person either. I forget if they say his actual age.
He's 35.
Yeah.
He's 35. He was 15 when he went to war, and the war lasted for 20 years.
Yeah,
he's specifically early middle-aged.
Yeah.
He's also a war hero, though, so, like, he's not... While he's older, he may not be in true peak physical form, but he's, like, firefighter.
He's a big guy with muscles.
He's a big guy.
And...
He takes care of himself.
Yeah.
He's strong.
But he also has a number of scars, too, from all of his fighting.
True. Also very true. Having talked with him and realizing that he really is not intending to hurt them, and realizing, hey, it's better to have someone who we can trust and put up with than have him die and be replaced by someone we can't. The elder gives him a yurt, 2 bars, which are these small sheep creatures that are very intelligent and are a major part of this story. Some supplies, some food and things, and assigns Alna to be his teacher, help get things set up in a camp for himself. Again, really annoys her, but she doesn't say no. And so they go back to the stream where they were before. They start setting up the tent. They start setting up the yurt. The elder is going to come by, is going to pick out 2 bars, a mating pair for him to have, to start building up a flock, and so that he can have a few other things, and we'll get back again to the bars in a moment. And Alna is organizing his supplies, and Diaz is there frantically trying to think of how to get any number of subjects, because he's currently at 0. And Alna just gets so fed up with them and says, here, take this. This is, I believe it's Matani dust.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This powder to summon wild creatures. Go scatter a little around, hunt a couple of monsters to get some food, and then, like, come back. And so he's like, perfect. That I know how to do. So he takes the dust. He goes marching way off away because she says, like, don't do it right here because we don't want them to damage anything. So he walks until he's completely out of sight. Then he looks at the bag and goes, how much is a little? I don't really know. So he throws the bag in the air. So all of it sprays out. A giant herd of black ghee, these buffalo monsters, somewhere between 50 and 100, show up. And he's like, okay, yeah, let's do this. Pulls out his axe, murders half of them. And the rest of them like, this human, don't like him. We're leaving. And they all run away. And so he's like, oh, great, I did it. But how am I going to carry these back? Okay, let me pick. So he picks one up. He walks back to the camp and says, hi, Anna. I killed some of these. Like, oh, you killed them? Like, how many? Like 1 or 2? Like 50?
Yeah.
maybe 30. Somewhere
30,
between 30
40.
and 50. And her jaw just drops to the floor. It's like, oh, okay. Maybe I was wrong about you.
Yeah.
So this is around when the elder comes with the 2 bars. They send them some other villagers to go and collect them. They're like, okay, we're going to take a lot of them, but we'll trade you whatever parts we take. We'll give you something in exchange for it. But there's 50 of them. You obviously can't do all this yourself. And the next day, they're like, Alna's like, okay. Why don't we go do some hunting again? I'm going to go with you. This will be fun. And Alna's like very different mood about it. It's like, okay, we're going to go hunting. So the 2 of them go off to go hunting. And they're going to look for a different kind of monster because, hey, he's good at fighting monsters. He can use that to get something of value, get food, all that, because that's what he needs to do to be able to survive out here. And they come across a giant turtle, which turns out is an earth dragon. The moment they see it, Alan's like, we need to run now because we're both going to die. And Diaz looks at it and goes, no, I can take it. Picks up his axe, walks over to the giant turtle. The giant turtle looks at him and basically ignores him, hides in its shell. He picks up his axe, climbs on top of it, whacks it with his axe. Nothing happens. Whacks it 5 or 6 more times. His axe starts to break. Fortunately, as we learned from Diaz, his axe can do something special where he can make it fix itself because he won it during the war. So he spends the next 5 to 7 hours whacking the back of the turtle with this axe over and over again. And there's a great line in it. I want to know if the manga does this as well. We're going to talk about that in a bit. But there's this great line in it where after like the 7 hours, he looks over at Alna and she's still just there standing there like bored out of her mind, just watching him smack the back of this turtle. And it's just like, yeah, it's been that long. But finally, he's able to hit it in such a way it cracks the shell. Mm-hmm. The earth dragon freaks out, tries to attack him. They end up in an actual battle. At one point, when it comes out to attack, Diaz goes to attack him, and then it realizes he's going to kill it, so it hides back in its shell, so he climbs back on its shell to attack it through the shell, and it comes back out. It happens 3 or 4 times, and finally, the dragon realizes it can hit Alna instead, and in that moment, Diaz gets very upset and chops the thing's head off. And Alna breaks down in tears. What he eventually finds out is she is so happy she's going to marry him. Yes. And he's very confused. And again, we're going to talk more about the details on this later, but basically, Diaz is now a dragon slayer. The giant turtle monster dragon is worth so much money that if they could trade it, they would get pretty much everything they need. The Onikin tribe comes, brings it back, disassembles it, gives them most of the parts, the shell fragments, the bones, the teeth, the fangs, the claws, the core, all these other parts. They take some of it to build him a well, a privy, They give him a bunch of yurts. They give him a storage tent. They give him all these other things. And Alna marries Diaz. Kind of. Technically, yes. Technically, no.
I think they're married.
Again,
yeah,
they are married, but it's specifically in a certain way where they're married, but Diaz is specifically stating, like, I'm going to wait till you're 18, so we're only engaged.
That's true.
Even though we had a wedding. Because Anna is 15 at the very start of the story, turns about 16, and Diaz is like, I'm 35. That's too young. We're going to wait.
Yeah,
and she's just
that
like,
is true.
Okay, sure. Like, I don't get it, but all right, fine. Again, that's another big thing I want to talk about this because it's hard to... There's a lot about this that I'm skipping over to do the summary, but we need to mention. But from here, we're going to pick up. That's like the first quarter of the book. The rest of this book, we start with her and the two bars, these two little sheep creatures called Francis and Francois. He now has his first subjects. He has 3 subjects. He did it.
Yes.
And he's like, yes, I did it. And from there, things start snowballing so fast. He gets up to 4 almost immediately after when a bunch of things start happening in a row. A delegation from the third princess of the king, Diane, comes to try and convince him to come back to war. Diaz adamantly refuses and also only shows his personal yurt and nobody else. The bars are hidden, and Alna is hidden with her concealment magic, and she turns them away. But Klaus, one of the guards who specifically escorted her to bring her to Diaz because they work together, intentionally gets fired and comes and joins him because he served under Diaz during the war. And we start learning Diaz wasn't just a war hero because he won battles, but he was a good man who took care of things, took care of the people under him, and all of these other accomplishments he did besides just winning battles, which he also did. Then a group of 12 elderly women, who's led by a 90-year-old woman, whose name is Maya, but they refer to her as Grandma Maya, who escaped from the neighboring kingdom of Kazdex, which is currently going through serious civil unrest because the second son of the Duke ended up hiring mercenaries to remove the Duke and the first son. So they escape. They end up coming and joining. And he's like, yes, 16! Also during this point, someone gets pregnant, which is specifically the female bar becomes pregnant.
Yes.
And that's a whole chapter of like, oh my goodness, we're gonna have kids. The bars are gonna have kids.
Because the bars are very important in the story.
The bars are very important. We're gonna I promise you we're gonna spend a lot of time talking about them in a second. And they are full characters.
Yes.
Like Francis and Francois are not just there in the yard and you see them. They talk to them. They are involved in it. They can't speak, but they can understand people speaking to them.
Yes.
As if they could speak the language. They just simply can't speak back. And they say, although it's never translated for us, the reader, and Diaz very much struggles with this, even to this day, but people can understand what the bars are saying based on how they bleat back to questions.
Yes.
And they're very expressive.
Yes. And that does come across in the manga as well.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way the faces they make and how they move. And
yep. In the book, it's a lot more of they show them looking at him at certain moments and you realize like they're probably thinking this. And it's like, quiet you. I know what you're thinking. And they just bow back at him. And he's like, oh, I'm trying, okay? This is followed up by the frog merchant, Peijin, who they get a ton of new supplies from, and also, quote-unquote, sells them to girls with pointy ears. You know, like elves would be, although nobody says the word elves. Just weird pointy-eared demi-humans who maybe had parents who lived in the forest. I don't know what they are. And not exactly sold.
yes.
There's a big part of about slavery, and Diaz does not want slaves in his kingdom, but it's a thing that exists, and we're not buying them And they weren't ever really sold, but their parents died. They asked the merchant to take care of them. The merchant's been trying to find somewhere for them to go and has lost a lot of money. He's like, all right, fine. I'll pay any debts they have. I'll pay for all of that. And they can live here. And that is Senai and Ayan. Again, they're not as important in this book, but they become very important. And then finally, we have Eldon, the second son of the Duke from that neighboring kingdom that just had a big revolt, who has a huge harem, who shows up on a carriage that is just a giant bed. Turns out he's a half demi-human. Mm-hmm. And this story, demi-human, we should also say, is just a catch-all for non-human races. The Onikin are demi-humans.
Right, yes.
The elves are demi-humans, but there's dog people, cat people. All those things all fall under demi-human. Eldon is a half demi-human with a human father and a elephantkin mother. And because he's half... him specifically, it's not always with all demi-humans, but him specifically, he can transition between very normal-looking, big, chunky human and elephant human.
Yep, with the big trunk and everything, and big ears.
Yeah, and monstrously strong. But he ends up coming to visit. He has a harem, not because he wanted a harem, but because he wanted to help the other demi-humans.
Right.
And so he said he wanted one, so he could buy them all. And most of them he just released. But other demi-humans were like, yeah, but this is a really good thing you're doing, and we want to support you, so I'm going to marry you anyway. So he ends up with 12 wives, despite not actually wanting that.
Yes.
And he's this monstrously strong but sickly man who's trying to protect demi-humans. And then when his father, who's this very evil duke, found out, he tried to kill him, destroy like everything he's done. So he tried to protect everybody, which led to a revolt, which led to his father and his elder brother basically getting deposed. I don't think they die, but they're kicked out of the kingdom and have nothing.
They're not.
Don't really show up again.
Important to the story after that, really.
Yeah. And he takes over and he starts working to protect demi-humans. Yes. And he hears about Diaz.
He knew about Diaz already, didn't he? Like, he'd heard of him.
Yes, Diaz is a war hero. He's fought in a war for 20 straight years and has been one of the most famous people in the country. There's a specific reference where a play is written about him and his exploits that then the nobles hate, so it gets thrown away, but people keep talking about the play. He's involved in numerous battles. He's won all of them decisively. People everywhere love him. And so Eldon has heard stories about him, wanted to come and meet him.
Yes.
And it's actually shown that Eldon can see through Alna's concealment magic, which is kind of like, okay, he's pretty powerful. That's pretty cool. He can do something. But they become friends from this as Eldon sees him like, oh, you're going to marry a demi-human. You like demi-humans. That's awesome. Be my friend.
Pretty much, like, yeah.
Okay. He's my friend. Yay. Oh, my heart hurts. Blah. And then the book ends with, immediately following that, a group of bandits led by mysterious person decide to try and attack and kill Diaz. Mm-hmm. And it's another battle where you get to see Alna is an incredible archer and has powerful magic. And then when a rogue arrow grazes Alna's cheek, Diaz goes crazy and literally kicks the shit out of everybody.
Yes. He doesn't kill anybody.
That's the other thing. He beats a group of about 12 people without killing any of them.
Yeah.
He's not harmed. He is a monstrous fighter. At one point, like, he gets in a one-on-one fight with the leader of the group, and he swings his axe once. The guy blocks with a sword. His sword shatters, and then he's just kicked and is out. And that's the majority of the events of the first book.
So then in the manga, that's pretty much how the second book ends.
Okay.
So it's 2-1.
Yeah, that's kind of where I felt. And we've run through this really quickly, and just to say this on the story, and I can attest to this now, having reread it. It's totally great, even if you know everything that's going to happen, because a lot of it, you kind of know what's going to happen, and you kind of know the way that it's going to happen pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Other than there's a few moments where like, oh, okay, that's a surprising way to do it. But it's a story that really does well when the enjoyment isn't what or how, but the process of watching it happen.
Yes.
When there's a fight or when there's a conversation, you enjoy like watching these characters interact. Even though the fights are not super detailed, you enjoy watching them happen. Okay, something has happened. They're going to go out and do the thing. They're going to fix it, and they're going to come back. We didn't spoil the entire first book, but it's a great thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really good. I think they're pretty much 1-to-1 almost of the story. The only difference is, I believe, just minor details here and there of them trying to turn the story into a visual art form. But it's just, the story's great. It's really funny. There are some great times when people are just talking, and then someone says, what? It's very expressive. And then you have Diaz, who's, as we said, was fighting the turtle. And you just see him sitting there whacking the turtle with his axe. Nothing's happening. He's like, this isn't working. So he hits it harder. There's a big fight, and then they're fighting, and it's kind of a stalemate. And then in the manga version, you see the turtle look at Alna, and it just like a evil grin appears on its face, and it starts laughing. He's like, I know what to do. And you just see Diaz's face twist into rage. And he just splits the turtle in half in the book. But the way it's just a whole page of him just smashing the axe down, like a close-up of his face. And you could see the pure power that he's going to exhibit. And it just destroys the turtle. It's just 2 pages of him swinging and the turtle just being obliterated. Like, full pages. It's like, this is all you see for 2 pages. Is him, one swing, one smash, and that's it.
Yeah.
The turtle's done.
That is like literally almost word for word exactly what happens in the book, except in the book he doesn't smash the turtle, he just decapitates it.
Yeah.
But there is the moment where the turtle looks and almost has the equivalent of the evil glint and evil laugh in the book too, and he's like, oh, it's over.
Yeah.
How was so this is something, because again, I read the book and you read the manga. Like, how was the very like beginning where he's getting dropped off in the carriages and first meets on, like, how is that presented in the manga? Because that is one of the best scenes in this book too. Tell me about it.
As it starts out, he's, as we said before, he's the war hero. He's sent off by the king. You just see him traveling. He's just sitting in this back of the carriage. He has no idea where he's going. Just looks bored. And then he gets to this grassland, and it's just like nothing. Just a big scene of nothing. You can see in the distance, really, really far away, some mountains. But otherwise, it's dead, flat grass everywhere. And then he's like, oh, well, okay, I guess I'm here now. So as he finds a stream, and it shows him taking a bite of the grass. Oh, this might be good. No, it's not. So he's like, all right, I guess I'll just sleep here and see what happens. So then it shows him just going to sleep. And then you wake up, and there's Alna, and it's just like, okay, she's yelling at me for some reason. So you get this full picture of her. You kind of get her whole vibe of, this is a nomadic people. She has the horn, she has the bow, the quiver, and all that, and she's just kind of like, what's going on? And she's almost going to shoot him with an arrow. It's like, you're not supposed to be here. It's like, okay, you gotta explain some stuff. He just yells at her, I am your ally, and no matter the enemy, I will protect you. And she's like, what? Her Oni horn just glows like the sun in the picture. It's like, oh, it's so bright. It's like, I have to take you back to the village. We have to go now. And then that's where you meet the elder and you continue the story. But the faces that people make in this is so over the top, because you have like, Diaz is like a very strong, muscular person, big grizzled face, and it's like, and then there's times where he just has like this goofy face on. It's like, ha ha ha. But then there are scenes where he is like dead serious and the face just gets more detailed and more angular. It's like, I will do this.
Okay.
The differences between like the more fun, lighthearted style where he's just kind of staring off into space sometimes, and like now is the time to act, is what really brings the humor into this. And it's really funny because there's some over the top scenes of. There's one time when they're talking to the elder, and he's like, "Oh, the king is bad," and it just shows him just hunched over, panic in his face, and there's just blood splotches on the picture. Like, this is terrible. It's like, because they try to really bring out the highs and lows in like really interesting scenes. Yeah. Just to like hit home what's going on, because then he has this really like happy-go-lucky face in the next scene. And there's so many times where he's just like, I don't get it.
Okay, I have to say this. I have to interrupt you because this makes me so happy. So it sounds like the manga is like, it's obviously from the visual perspective, and it's a little bit more of showing everybody sort of neutrally. But that is almost word for word what happens at every single moment, just if you had only Diaz's internal monologue.
Okay.
Like, when like the king comes up and he's just like, oh, no, like every scene, the way you describe it, I am your ally and I will protect you from any enemy. And then Anna's like, what? Ah, my horn is so bright. Why is this happening? Damn it, I hate this. Every single moment you've described, it sounds like it's exactly the same in the book. It's just, it's usually written specifically from Diaz's perspective, and it's a written medium instead of an art medium, but it's the same feeling every single time. Yeah. And I love that. Because the book does it really well. It sounds like the manga does it incredibly well. It's very good. Mm-hmm. It's very simple. It's not literary. It's not 100% super original. It's not this crazy thing, but it's just done well. Yes. And the expressiveness of these characters really comes out.
Yes. Yes. I wholeheartedly agree.
Okay.
The one thing that the manga does also is that there are additional bonus short stories at the end of each one. Mm-hmm. Just like little slice of life ones. Like one of them is about how Alna and Diaz and Francois and Francis are just interacting around the pen one time. And then they're all different, like little tiny short stories. But the one thing that's really hilarious is at the end of every book, there's the afterword where they talk to the authors and the artists, things like that. But then there's like some early design concepts, which are kind of neat if you're really into understanding how the story kind of progressed, because they do some early like bar pictures, some early Diaz illustrations, because there's the light novel, which has the author, but then there's typically also illustrations for the light novel, which is different from the illustrations for the manga. So they're usually different artists. So they usually try to work off each other. So the light novel artist, the manga artist will draw inspiration from those, but they can't do it exactly the same because it has to be able to be a little less detailed so they can draw it a little more. So it's kind of a mix of both. The one thing they also add at the end of every manga is some pin-ups, mostly of Diaz. There is so much. There's not a ton of it, but if there's fan service in the volume, it's usually of Diaz. Because he's just covered in muscles, and it's usually him in like a really awkward pose. Like he's not really paying attention to the camera. He's just like, because in the first one, he's just taking off his shirt. In the second one, he's at the beach, kind of falling into the ocean. But then there's usually one of Alna as well at the end. Like in the actual story, it's usually just Diaz, but at the end, there's usually one of Diaz and one of Alna. And Alna's like, what are you doing? Stop looking at me. And Diaz is like playing it up for the camera. It's really funny.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, speaking of the art in this, the artist for the light novels does a bunch of different illustrations. They're all great. There's a couple of fan servicey ones, but they're generally the right moment from every section of the story where they pop up. I believe there's even one where it's Diaz like black rage mode killing the turtle, just like in the comic, except it's not him smashing the turtle in half. It's just him like slashing the page in half. Mm-hmm. They're all great. There's one where it's like, it's maybe not the best art I've ever seen, but it's still good. And even like some of them are just goofy. Like there's one where Alna gets embarrassed and upset at the bars because she's married but not technically married because they're technically still engaged, and like she has this discussion with the two sheep, and the two sheep are making fun of her, and she gets embarrassed about it. And this in the story works, and the image is there, and it's like, God, why is this good? It's so good. So the art in the light novel too is excellent. The cover art especially and the character design is very good. And there's like color illustrations at the end. Some of it I guess you could say is kind of finippy and fan servicey, but it's also like the kind of clothing that they wear to most of the rest of us is like, that's kind of skimpy. And it's like, no, that's just the clothing we wear when you live on the plains in the summer and the spring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the designs are excellent.
And for the most part, the setting is more medieval fantasy.
Yes, very much so.
And one thing also I forgot, that at the end of every manga, like the last page, there's always a summary of how many people live in the kingdom and all the different buildings they have.
Every single light novel begins summarizing how many people live in the camp and what buildings that they have and the things that they have in stock at the very end of the What Happened Last Time volume. I know exactly what you mean. It's probably not exactly the same, but they did the same thing. Mm-hmm. I'm amazed at how much it feels like they literally just took the book and made it a manga, and they changed nothing.
Yeah.
They maybe added a couple of things, and they maybe skipped over a couple of small parts. But there's a couple other things that I do want to talk about that I knew I was never going to get in the summary. First is, and we've already brought this up, DS as an idiot it's how he's described in the book. It's how he even talks about himself. It's how other people talk about him. But there's more nuance to it than that. And there are plenty of stories where the main character is a idiot. He's like not aware. He's not very smart. He's not very... DS is this very specific set of things.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That falls under that category. But also he's a very specific set of other things that are like, oh, wow, that's actually kind of incredible. We've talked about he's a war hero. He's extremely strong. He knows how to fight with a battle axe. We've also said he's not educated at all.
No.
He's also not clever. By that I mean, like, if you give him a problem, he can't think of an answer immediately. It doesn't matter how long he thinks about it. He will not come up with an answer. It's a big joke in the very beginning of the book. Alna is working on these things, and she's like, just stop bothering me. I'm setting up this stuff. Just do something else. And so he sits there for like a half an hour trying to think of how he could get more subjects. And he describes it as his brain is literally melting out of his ears, and he doesn't know what to do, and he's going crazy. If he doesn't immediately have an answer, like a natural answer just doesn't come to him, He can't come up with something clever. He can't take information and combine it to do something. He's just like, okay, tell me what to do. And that's when Alma says, all right, go hunting. And he's like, oh, hunting, punching stuff, running, physical activity, that will help. Got it. Off I go.
Yeah, and one thing to note, though, while he is a war hero, and he did win a lot of battles, he also tried to save as many people as he could. So there's a lot of people who remember him for just saving their lives. Like there's a time when him and Klaus, who did serve together, who's the guy who joins them, they were sent to take out, I don't remember exactly what it was, but there were children, I believe, locked in the basement, and they just stayed and fought the enemy until help arrived the next day to protect everyone who was living there. Because he's not going to let anyone come to harm if he can help it. He will be extremely tough on his enemies, but if someone needs help, he will be there, no matter what.
Specifically with children, that's another thing that comes up in the story, and there's this really beautiful scene when Senai and Anya, quote unquote, join the village, when he pays their debts and like has them come in. These are not just like children. These are like 4-year-olds.
Yes.
Who you find out soon watched their parents die and then got sold to this merchant and are basically skin and bones and rags. And he's just there with them, and he's like, okay, I know what to do. very gently, trying to get them to open up. And it's not just the book describes him talking to them to get them to open up. No, he's like, okay, these are kids. They have all this going on. He like crouches down to their levels, looking them in the eye, talking to them like, hey, this is my name. This is what I do. What kind of foods do you like to eat? Hey, this is my name. What's your name?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a name? I used to work in an orphanage. If you guys don't have a name, I could come up with some good names for you. I mean, your girls, you'd probably want something really cute. He specifically does this because they probably have names. And what he does this for, the kids were named by their parents. They love their parents. And like, no, we have names. It's like, oh, what are your names? And like, that's the first moment they start talking to him. Everyone else is looking at him like, what the heck? You could talk to children? And he's like, I used to run an orphanage. There are other things that he's good. He's incredibly emotionally intelligent.
Right. Yes.
There's the funny times where the dragon goes to attack Alna and he freaks out and like he loses his cool, but he doesn't put on airs. He's very capable of controlling his emotions. He's proud of his ability to fight, but that pride never keeps him from doing things. He's this very specific set of circumstances. And every time you see him do the right thing, there's a reason for it, and it's put in place, and he lives that sort of specific ideal. There's a really simple moment where Alna is talking about, bars are these very intelligent creatures, but when one of them gets pregnant, they're these emotional creatures. They're going to want to be close to the person that they consider like the head of the household. And by close, we don't mean like, oh, they want to see you every day. Like, no, they're going to want to sleep next to you in our tent.
Yeah.
For months. These are sheep. Like, they're going to be smelly. They're going to track dirt everywhere. They're going to do all of this. Like, I want to talk to you about this because, like, you're not from here. This is what's going to happen. Are you going to be okay? And he's like, hey, I've seen this animal. Like, it's clearly intelligent. I don't want to hurt it. I don't want to make it upset. I used to be in the war. You think a single, like, 2 sheep is going to be smelly when I used to, like, live in the mud, eat dirt rations?
Yeah.
I've been through the war. Like, it's okay. Oh, yeah. That's how you have this moment of this character doing the right thing, not by being the main character or not by realizing this is the right thing to do, but just being a good person.
Yes.
And as you said, and it was something I wanted to bring up, where he's protecting the children, the book literally starts off with, my mother liked to say, work in a way that is useful to your people. My father liked to say, be a man who defends the weak. That's Diaz. Nothing more than that. And like all these other experiences he's had, but he's this very good, helpful person. He never solves the problem because he's the hero and he should solve the problem. That's just a really good character who's this kind of foolish idiot who doesn't understand things, doesn't know how being a domain lord is, doesn't even understand, like, he doesn't know that he should probably have food before he invites people to live in his town. And Alna has to literally explain this to him. And he's like, you're right. That would be a smart thing to do. I should think about that. And then proceeds to continue to have his brain melting out the side of his head. Yeah. But it also just fits him so well. Do you have anything else you want to add on that? Because like that's what makes Diaz very special to me, is it's just this kind of a character who does all these things, and it always makes sense why he is that way.
No, I think you summed it up really well. He's not going to be someone who I think will change much throughout the series. He's just going to be the regular person who's just going to keep heading forward, keep trying to do his best he can. If he gets to something where he can't do it, this comes up in a few volumes later, but he'll just sit there, keep trying to do it over and over again until he gets it right.
Yes, that doesn't come up. Not like the 7-hour turtle battle where he keeps hitting it with an axe. Yeah. I mean, but yes, I know what you mean.
He will keep doing it until he gets it right. But he also is not a person, while he is incredibly strong and an excellent warrior, he's not someone who's looking to fight. He's not going out and looking for fights to test his strength or things like that to prove he is the best. He just happens to be strong, which helps him do what he needs to do.
And if it comes to the point where he has to fight, okay, he'll do it. He's very specific.
Yes.
Which I think does it really well. Like, you think of like, oh, it's the idiot character. Oh, it's just the everyman. It's like, no, Diaz is this very specific person. It makes for a really compelling story. The last thing that I wanted to make sure we talked on, because it's literally in the title of the manga. It's another half of the story, the other most important character, Alna. And we skipped over a lot of it. I don't think we have a lot of time to talk about all the stuff about the Onikin, but the other thing I wanted to stop and be like, hey, this is like important, is Alna's and Diaz's relationship, probably how we explained it, sounded very dumb or very bland. Alna is incredibly well written, and the development in that first quarter where she goes from, why are you here? Wake up. I'm going to kick you in the gut to make you wake up and possibly draw my bow and almost shoot you, to, oh my God, all I want in my life is to marry you. That change in the first quarter of the book is, in the actual moment, is maybe not 100% explained, but is almost immediately after explained to some degree. And there's always a reason behind it, and the reasons keep piling up as the series goes along. And I think the first big reason for it is the way the Onikin people think about marriage, which is even like a big thing that happens in this. Is Diaz is like, why does Alna keep talking about my manliness? And it's like,
yes,
we're a nomadic people. We have what we have and nothing else. Most women don't care if you're pretty. They don't care if you're this or that. But if you can hunt, if you can provide for a family, perfect, good. Everything else we'll go with.
Yeah.
And like, you realize every time that Alna's opinion has changed has been when Diaz has shown his willingness to fight for others or be someone who can take care of a family, can take care of a village, can take care of a city, and do these sorts of things. Like, that's when her mood changes.
Yeah, the more you can provide, the more people will like you, is the idea. Your manliness is dictated by what you can bring to the tribe, and Diaz's manliness goes through the roof when he takes out the earth dragon.
Diaz kills a dragon. Yeah. He like writes it off as like, well, it's just a big turtle, and everyone's looking at him like, you fucking idiot. It's a dragon. It's like, dragons fly and breathe fire. And it's like, not all dragons do that. That's a big part of it, of like, she has her reasons and she realizes like what he can do and provide. And it's also not just, oh, I've married you. Okay, all problems are resolved. There are scenes, I don't know how often they come up in the manga. The book is mostly written from Diaz's perspective, but every once in a while you get a different character. There are scenes in short stories where you see Alna working through her own feelings of like, okay, he killed a dragon. I'm going to marry this person because that will provide for my family and provide for the village. But then also, like, as I talk to him, as I watch him interact with the bars, like, he's also like a good person. That works out well. And like, there's this build up to the romance in addition to that.
Yeah.
It's not just the like, oh, you killed the dragon, okay, I'll marry you.
No, it's definitely a more slow burn for their relationship to get deeper. While they are engaged / married, depending on who's talking, we're still trying to get to know each other, but they're working together. They're living with each other, sort of.
Well, not sort
of. They're living in the same yurt. It's not the kind of married life that you would think of when two people are married. It's very much, we barely know each other, but we want to get to know each other. But we also have to figure out how to survive. We have to build up the kingdom. We have to take care of the bars. There's a lot of other things going on that, while don't get in the way, take up a lot of their time. So there is some interaction on the romantic side, but it's very light in the first volume.
It is. And I think another thing that comes with that is Alna's very much of like, now I need to make sure you do this so that you're healthy. Just starts going through the list of chores of like, okay, now I got to take care of this. Okay, you're going to do this. Okay, here's like in Onikin society, like we drink a lot of herbal tea and we use these sort of medicines. And it's like, okay, well, you haven't been here, so you're going to have to start using a lot more of it. She immediately goes into like, not just teaching him how to do these things and like taking care of the town, but like she's not just there because he's rich and powerful, but she's there putting in every moment of the work to help him.
Right.
The same thing of Diaz is this very specific character with this very specific set of skills and personality. And Alna is the same. She's not just, oh, she's the romantic interest or she's this. Like, she's this very specific set of things. And while, yes, the story is never dramatic and there's never, like, back and forth or bickering in a lot of the scenes, she does things that other people don't necessarily like, but they put up with because it's like, okay, this is the thing. When she starts taking care of the two little girls, Diaz talks about how she's very, very strict with them when they do something wrong, but also loves braiding their hair. Yes. And it's this like, okay, nobody's ever just perfect in this.
No.
Even though there isn't that sort of friction in this. Something like Dandadan or Don't Toy with Me, Miss Nagatoro, where it's like people are clearly bothered by the other person and are annoyed by them and like, oh, are they going to get together? Or are they going to like get into an actual fight or something? Like, there's almost none of that, but they're a person.
Right. Yeah, there's very little friction between the characters. They can get annoyed at each other because sometimes DS usually does something silly. Everyone typically gets along. The only people who don't you can tell, are the bad guys who have come in to cause trouble. But for the most part, everyone gets along because they're trying to make the kingdom better. And that's what they're all there for. They were all, like the Klaus left his work to come work for Diaz, and the elderly women escaped their plight to come live here. So everyone's trying to make this a better place for everyone. And that really comes across as this is a story, for the most part, it's a happy story about people living in this land, trying to survive, and just all the little adventures they get into.
Yeah.
It's good. There's no dark parts from this story. It's very light. It's very happy for the most part. There's some sad times when you hear about characters' different backstories and what they went through, but for the most part, it's a very happy slice of life kind of story where you're just seeing these people's lives as they try to build up this kingdom that has 0 subjects. And every book, he gets a few more, and just the adventures they have as they try to make a better place for them to live.
Again, the manga and the books seem to be almost like word for word the same, and all these things that we've talked about, while new characters come in, it's not that any of the points you brought up so far go away. You learn more and more about who Diaz was and what he went through, and that gives more information about what he's going to do. You learn more about Alna and what she went through growing up, and you see how that affects what's going on now. Senai and Anya, who we've just touched on as these 2 little girls that join their family and are like kind of scared at the start, they become major characters in the next book, and from then on and do all sorts of really important things. Klaus is another major character who shows up and kind of stands around to guard the village whenever Diaz has to go somewhere else.
He has a much bigger role later. In the beginning, he's just kind of there. He's just, as you said, a guard. But he has a much bigger story and much more interaction with everyone else in the next few volumes.
Yep. And even the 2 bars, Francis and Francois, they have multiple arcs that they're involved in the next couple of books too. And they're characters. They're part of this story. And all it does is add on to it more.
Yep.
that's Frontier Lord. Do you have anything else you want to add? Anything else you want that I skipped over?
No, I think we covered everything. Definitely check it out. It's really good. Light novel, manga, take your pick. They're both great.
Yeah, it sounds like whichever one you go to, you're going to get the same story, and it's whichever you enjoy more. Yeah. It's a great story. Neither of us picked it as one of our top 5, but
it's one of those.
We both had it on our honorable mentions. I think because it's always good.
Yep.
And sometimes it's great, but it never goes beyond great to become exceptional.
Yeah.
But it's always good to great. It never has. I can't think of a moment that I was disappointed in this.
No.
Not just the first volume, but the whole series so far.
No, it's definitely one of those. It does what it does. It does it really well. But sometimes, I guess, maybe it doesn't take enough risks. It's not going to try to change how you view things. It's something that's been done before. It just does it really well. And for all I know, maybe it'll be in the top 5 this year. Because there's more coming out, so...
Yep, there's always more. I wouldn't say it's cozy, but I feel like if I was going to describe the problem, it's too cozy. It, like you said, it doesn't take a big enough risk to try to get to that truly amazing moment, but it's always good.
Yeah, it's cozy. It does what it does really well. Yeah, so I highly recommend it.
All right.
Huh?
Well, with that, that'll be it for this time. So thank you very much again for listening to this and hopefully going and getting this series because it's really good and writing angry emails to Shonen Jump and saying they should bring back Red Hood.
I don't think that's happening.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening at all. But anyway, either way, thank you for listening. If you like the episode, feel free to let us know your comments, your concerns, any ideas, anything you want to talk to us about. You can reach us at Mudai Manga Book Club at gmail.com, or you can follow us on Blue Sky at Mudai Manga Book Club. We have started doing YouTube visualizer episodes on YouTube, so you can certainly check us out there. Again, Mudai Manga and Book Club on YouTube, or just Mudai Manga Book Club.
Same as the Gmail Mudai Manga Book Club.
So Mudai Manga Book Club on YouTube, not at YouTube. If you are currently listening on YouTube, hey, if you wouldn't mind giving us a like and subscribing, that would be great. It helps us out and just lets us know that you're out there listening. Do you have another recommendation for everybody that you would like to let us know about?
Yeah, it's something that I've read a while ago that I think isn't talked about enough. It's called Akane Banashi. It's about a girl who does or is learning how to do Rogoku, which is a
Rakugo.
Yeah. She's learning how to do Rakugo, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is a traditional Japanese storytelling. So one person goes up and tells a story to an audience, and she is learning how to do this. Her father does it, so she wants to learn. And it kind of goes through the process, kind of what it is, how people learn how to do it, all the different kind of tribulations and trials that she has to go through to learn to become a master. So what does that mean? Who does she have to study under? Kind of what levels are there to become good at this skill? And it teaches you a lot about how Rakugo works, how traditional Rakugo is done, and it's a very modern day Japan slice of life story about someone learning to do this skill. And it's really good. It's been going on for a little while. I need to get back into it, but it's really good. And it's something that I had no idea what it was when I first started reading it.
Excellent. For me, I was trying to think of something that would be a little bit different from everything else, sort of like that. And so I came up on Spy X Family. I've only gotten through a little bit of it, but if you don't know anything about this, I believe it's set in like quote unquote not Europe, in not World War II-ish era thing. It's all like technically made up countries. Yes. And it's about what ends up becoming a spy family of a extremely talented spy, an assassin, and a girl with psychic powers at least at the start, none of whom know that the other is those things.
Correct. Yeah.
For different reasons. It's a semi-serious, semi-actiony spy story. It has more humor. It has more moments where things are a bit silly.
Mm-hmm.
The premise is a bit silly, but it's done in a fun little way. And the three main characters are very cute, work well together as these different sets of things. And it's just an entertaining story. Again, I've only gotten through the first book, but it is one of those stories where it grabs you by, if it's going to grab you, it can grab you by chapter 1, chapter 2. It does not take its time to get going. It's what you will enjoy, and it comes right out first couple of pages of it. So it's just an excellent series.
Yep. And there's an anime and I think a movie as well.
I believe so. It's gotten quite popular, and I believe in English there's 13 volumes released, although I'm sure you can get all the way up to simulpub with it because it's popular enough for them to immediately translate it each week.
They do. I don't think it's each week, though. I think it's either bi-weekly or monthly.
Oh, yep, that could be.
But yes, you can get the simultaneous publishing as well. Yep. But yeah, I'd recommend that one as well. It's really good. All right.
And as for next week, if you want to keep up with us and join us during the main review time, we are going to be reviewing
Coppersmith Bride.
So, how much of it?
Just the first volume.
Okay. If you want to keep up with us, definitely check it out. Oh, hey, look, it's another series from our notables.
No reason.
For no reason, yes. But if you want to keep up with us, check out the first volume of that, and we will see you all next time.
All right. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Peace.
So like an original Red Hood one shot.
Original super hot.
Yes. Because her father does it. Her father does it.
Musical note. Boop.
Cool. Only 2 hours and 35 minutes.
Ah, damn it.
Yeah, but there's a lot of fluff.
No, there's not. There was a lot more fluff in the testing episode. I was like, it's hour and 59 minutes, and then I realized like there was 20 minutes at the end of us just rambling afterwards.